It is my pleasure to welcome Jerry Izenberg back to the Old Guard. Last week, he spoke to us about Newark through the lens of his first novel, After the Fire. Today, he will shift gears and talk about the Super Bowl. Jerry is eminently qualified to do that. He attended and reported 53 Super Bowls, and the number of awards he has won testify to how well he has covered them. Jerry has been voted into almost as many sports halls of fame as Yogi Berra has World Series rings. He has been inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame of New Jersey, the National Sportscasters and Sportswriters Association Hall of Fame, the Boxing Hall of Fame, the New Jersey Hall of Fame, and the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. In 2000, he won the Red Smith Award from the Associated Press sports editors. Jerry, we are delighted that you have returned to be with us today. The Zoom microphone is yours.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be here. But first, let me give you the commercial. I want to make a point about a book that I wrote in 2014, and I was not happy with it. The publisher butchered the editing, and we brought it out again now in paperback early this year. It's doing extremely well. It's called Once There Were Giants, The Golden Age of Heavyweight Boxing. And there it is on the screen. And I really love it. And this time, the introduction will be by Manny Pacquiao, who did a great job of praising me. I think I was looking over his shoulder when he wrote it. And I just want to say it's a good book. Do not buy the hardcover. Get the cheaper paperback. It's a better book. And I guarantee you'll enjoy it. And so much for boxing today. I really didn't know. We talked about briefly about what I might talk about, and we discussed the Super Bowl, of course. And then somebody told me, well, but we've got a lot of football fanatics here, so I think I'm going to digress a little bit with that. And I was at the Ice Bowl. That was 1967, the coldest day in the history of football. I wasn't at Rutgers in 1867 when they played the first game, but I'm sure it was warmer than it was in Green Bay. It was 12 degrees Fahrenheit. And as the late night comics say, how cold was it? I'll tell you how cold it was. At the start of, they had wooden goalposts. And after the Packers won it, beat the Cowboys. And by the way, I'll just tell you a little about that play. They were on the 1 or 2 yard line, and they needed 3 points for a tie to go to overtime. And they were in a playoff tackle. And Jerry Kramer, who had pulled on the play, slipped, fell down, and it was stopped for no gain. Now there's like maybe 10, 12, 14 seconds left on the clock. Timeout. They went over to the sidelines. And Lombardi yells, field goal team, field goal team. And Bart Starr taps him on the shoulder, just a coach. Because you never said, like, you're wrong. You had to set him up first. A coach. I think we can run that last play over again. Well, Jerry Kramer fell on his ass in the mud. I'm not going to take a chance. Listen to me. Jerry swears he'll knock that guy on his ass. Lombardi, okay, do it. And of course he did. And that's the Green Bay went on to the Super Bowl, and the game became history. Now the game is over. The Green Bay fans were very savage people because they, the state of Green Bay drinks more brandy than that country of France. So they were really ready for this game. They're all over the field. They ripped the goalposts down, and these goalposts are wooden, not metal. Some enterprising young kid, I'd like to know what he's doing today for a living, comes out of the stand with a rip saw. And as the crowd thins, he stands over or kneels over the goalpost, and he's starting to saw. He's going to cut the goalpost up into pieces and sell them as souvenirs. Meanwhile, I'm freezing my ass off. Guy turns to me. There's no windows in the press box. Guy turns to me and he says, "Take a drink, take a drink." Well, I never drink when I'm working, really. But I drank that, and it was like drinking water. I was so cold. Takes me about 40 minutes. I finish my piece. I look up. There's that kid out there still sawing. How cold was it? It was so cold that the wood never separated. And it was a very memorable day for me. In fact, somebody said, I went downstairs, went quick, get some quotes. And the quote I got was, "Shut the damn door, it's freezing in here." That was the ice bowl. But that was, it sticks in my mind much more than many of the Super Bowls, because many of the Super Bowls are simply disappointments, mismatches, and odes to television commercials. They don't mean that much. I want to tell you about the first Super Bowl. For it to come to pass, the American League and American National League had emerged. Roselle was a particular friend of mine. By the way, I'll give you another commercial. I did a book called Roselle, a biography, and I recommend it. But he would tell me things because we were both single fathers. So I got a different side of everything that happened in the NFL headquarters. Well, there were all these secret meetings. They finally get ready to merge. Now the call goes out. Don't tell anybody. We're going to call a press conference for tomorrow, but don't tell them what it's about. We got to keep this thing secret. Okay, now Jim Kensel, who was Roselle's publicity guy, Roselle called him my offensive and defensive coordinator. He calls up Ron Hunt's guy, a guy named Al Ward. Not Ron Hunt, I'm sorry. The guy who, Hunt, the guy who ran the Kansas City Chiefs. And he says, "We're going to merge. We're going to have a press conference. You want you there. Don't tell anybody." So he checks into the hotel. They get on the shuttle. Now Roselle and Kensel put on sunglasses and hoodies, and nobody should notice who they are when they come to the hotel. And there is Lamar Hunt on his, "Hey guys, I'm over here." Roselle took one arm, Kensel took another arm. The guy never left footprints between there and the suite that they had used to stash him overnight. Press conference was a big success, and the switchboard operator told a lot of people they go after the big guys, and I go after the switchboard operators because they can tell you what's going on in the building. She said, "Jerry, the phones are jumping off the hook. Everybody wants to come to this game," which in the end turned out not to be true. They asked me, "When is it going to be? Where is it going to be?" There's nothing I can tell them.
You're sleeping at this end now, is that it?
I'm sorry?
Yes, it
Somebody
is.
asked me a question, right? Didn't somebody say something?
That's somebody talking. Keep going.
Oh,
Jerry.
okay. Well, I don't blame them. If I were in the audience, I'd talk. So now we're going to have this game, and it's going to be Kansas City against Green Bay Packers. Well, Lombardi and Roselle are at war. Lombardi was never gracious with the press in any way, shape, or form, but he was my buddy. So at least I had that little in, because I knew him when he was the backfield coach with the New York Football Giants. So I said to Jack Murphy from the San Diego Union, rest his soul, I said, "Listen, we were in Anaheim. Roselle was mad at the Chamber of Commerce in LA because they wouldn't give him all the things he wanted. So he moved the press headquarters to Anaheim." I said, and Lombardi's up in Santa Barbara. Now here's what happened there. Roselle calls Lombardi 10 days before the Super Bowl, and he says, "Listen, you're going to train in LA, and he says, "I'm not training in LA. Oh, he's going to train in Santa Barbara." He said, "I'm not training in Santa Barbara. I'm training at Ricky's at Palo Alto. I've always had good luck." He said, Roselle said, "Listen, you know how far it is from Palo Alto to Los Angeles? You'll never get any media." And Lombardi said, "That's exactly my idea." And he said, "Well, I don't care. You're going to train in in Santa Barbara. And Lombardi says, well, I'm not. And Roselle says, you are, and hangs up. And he says, and that's in order. That was the first test between Roselle and Lombardi, and Lombardi had to go. So I said to Jack Murphy from the San Diego Union, let's drive up there and let's push Lombardi's buttons, because I know how to do it. We get in the car, we drive up the coast, beautiful drive, Pacific Ocean. I mean, for Santa Barbara, it's a beautiful place. We make a turn away from the ocean, we're a block or two in, and there's a motel. And marching up and down in front of the hotel is Lombardi. He's steaming, and he knows we're coming and pretends he doesn't, right? Because I called him the day before. He says, what do you guys want? You shouldn't be here. I said, Vince, please, isn't this a beautiful place to train for a Super Bowl? He says, it's a horseshit place to train, and don't contradict me. Look, I'm just telling you this. Meanwhile, all the players, it was one of those terrace hotels, like the old Hyatts when they started. And the whole team, they're watching Lombardi vent, they're laughing their asses off. And I'm pushing them further and further. And he whips and turns around, he points up to Fuzzy Thurston. I don't want to see any of you guys in the pool today either. It's a $15,000 fine. He turns around and he walks away. Well, I get up there and Fuzzy's taking his son with Jerry Kramer, and I don't remember who the third guy was. And I said, do you have any concerns? You've never seen this football game. Nobody in the National League has ever seen anybody in the American League play. This is Super Bowl I. He says, not a problem. We're going to win because we got the best coach in the world, and that's the way it's going to be. And the next day, Jack and I go over to Kansas City Chiefs. And I go to see Junius Buchanan, the big lineman, a wonderful player, who I knew because I had known him when he was at Grambling, and the Grambling coach is a buddy of mine, Eddie Robinson. So I walk into his room, and I got to understand something about the Super Bowl. I loved the first 4 Super Bowls, not because the games were any good, not because I listened to the publicity, but because as a newspaper guy, I interviewed those guys in their hotel rooms. I mean, you could write good stuff. Today, the NFL Gestapo, you can't even get on the same floor that they're living in, the hotel they're living in. So I go up there now, Junius is sitting here. I notice Bill Hines wrote a wonderful book, which I recommend, called Run to Daylight. And I see the spine is up and it's laying on Junius' bed. And I'm talking to him just as I did to Fuzzy. You don't know these guys. He said, well, I'm trying to learn who they are. I said, oh, you're reading Run to Daylight. He said, yeah, it's very interesting. Do you mind if I look at the book? No. I pick it up because I want to know what he's reading about. And this is the paragraph he's reading. When the Green Bay Packers win that sweep and the tackle pulls and they're coming around the end, in between end and tackle, the linebacker's eyes pop. And he's reading this crap to try to get introduced to this team. Well, of course, they got the crap beat out of him after a good first half. And the game was good. Before the game was interesting. Big secret, what is the halftime show going to be? Well, I got to tell you about halftime shows. Unlike probably everybody in this room, I did 53, the first 53 Super Bowls. And I wrote about the next 2, but I was there for the first 53. I never saw a halftime show ever because I was always working at halftime. And everything I've heard about the halftime shows, I'm glad I didn't see them. I mean, I came there to cover a football game, not to watch Janet Jackson have a wardrobe malfunction. Although I'm not knocking it, but that's the way it was. But this game, they came back in the second half and they really killed them. So afterwards, everybody puts Lombardi on the spot. How good are they? How good were they? Well, Lombardi got criticized heavily for knocking Kansas City, but he didn't knock them. He simply said, we did to them what we did to everybody else. And that's the way the game went. Close first half, massacre in the second half. Well, after that, the second Super Bowl was the Oakland Raiders and Al Davis. And I knew Al Davis the week that he became the coach of the Oakland Raiders. I was in a hotel lobby. There was a league meeting or so. I don't remember what the occasion was. It might have been a football game. he comes up to me and he hands me a business card. That was Al Davis. He says, the other guys will say, hey, listen, I got the job and I like to talk, he hands me a business card. I'm sure he didn't have gloves on, white gloves when he did it, but it was made a formal thing. He said, we're going to be in touch. You're going to see, you're going to love what we're going to do. And well, they had the world's greatest collection of misfits. And today they have a decent team, but their fans are the world's greatest collection of misfits. Although I think the Eagle fans give them a good run for it. Anyway, that's how I met Davis. Now and immediately I knew that Davis was a guy. He's going to be aggressive. And he's not taking any prisoners. He can't feed him. He can't house him. The hell with him. They're all going down. He's going to win the Super Bowl. Now this isn't football, but I think this is what you never read. Now it's the day before the game, right? We're in the Doral Beach Hotel. The only hotel I was ever in that had chandeliers in the elevators. There's an open staircase. In other words, nothing on either side, and steps just going up to the second floor where the administrative offices are. He's standing right next to that staircase, and he's telling us, when Lombardi wins that sweep, we're going to pull our linebackers. We're going to stick that sweep right up his ass. We're going to stick the ball right up Henry Jordan's ass. We're going to do that. And while he's doing that, all of a sudden, everybody is looking up. Their eyes are going toward that open staircase. And he realizes after a while, he's losing us. He turns to the staircase and he sees what we're looking at. A beautiful drop-dead Asian girl in stiletto heels walking up that open staircase with no underwear. And he looks at us and says, you guys are disgusting. Don't you know there's a football game tomorrow? And of course, we had all forgotten about that for about 40 seconds. Anyway, the game was interesting. I know they're going to lose. There's no way they're going to win. And they were a good team, by the way. They weren't a bad team. And I forget, what the hell am I going to write about? Another Lombardi story, another Bart Starr mastermind story. Willie Davis has a 38 sacks. What am I going to do? I just don't even want to be there. I'm beginning to think there's not much of a story here. Now, going into the middle of the second quarter, there isn't much of a story. The Packers aren't running over them on a scoreboard, but the Packers are kicking the crap out of them. And you know it's going to there's no way that Raiders are going to catch them. And I happened to look at the field at the lines, the two lines. I said, you got to find something to write about. There's a guy named Keating who plays tackle for, I think it was left tackle, for the Oakland team. He's had an injury the week before. His ankle is as swollen as a pregnant grapefruit, but he's gonna play. That was him, and that were those Raiders too. Meanwhile, he's paired up one-on-one for, they stunt, they do this, but basically they're one-on-one most of the game. Gail Gillingham, a converted center, is now playing guard. He had been in a very rough game, the last game of the season. And he had bruises all over his body and cuts, and the cuts form scabs. So I'm looking at these two guys. All of a sudden, I realized this is really what the Super Bowl is supposed to be. They're never going to catch him on a scoreboard, but these two guys are going after each other, mano a mano, and it's really brutal. After each sequence, Keaton drags his leg behind him off the field. Gillingham looks at him and says, well, I'll never see that son of a bitch again. And the next sequence, Keaton is out there and Gillingham is out there. And now there's blood all over Gillingham's jersey. And it ain't Keaton's blood, it's his blood. All those sores and scabs have opened up. And they do this nonstop every time it's the Raider defense against the Green Bay offense. They do it for the second quarter, the third quarter, the fourth quarter. I mean, it made great writing because neither one of these guys was going to give an inch, and neither one of these guys was healthy, and probably neither one of those guys should have been in the game. And when the final gun went off, I said, there's my story. because this was the Super Bowl. They could have played that game on a melting ice floe, and these two guys wouldn't look at the scoreboard. They wouldn't even know it. They're just going after each other. So a number of years later, maybe 15 years, I guess, I called Keating on the phone before the Super Bowl. And I said, for a midweek story. And I said, I never saw anything like that. And Keating said, well, it was pretty intense, wasn't it? I said, pretty intense. I said, well, what happened when the game ended? What'd you talk about? He looked at me on the phone and he said, nothing. The gun went off. I went left, he went right, never saw each other again. He said, do you know where he is? I said, he's my next phone call. Well, you tell that son of a bitch, give me the number. I'm going to call him as soon as you're finished. And I reunited those guys 15 years later for a glory moment that they will never forget. And I will never forget. All right, Super Bowl III. I'm not going to bore you by going through all the Super Bowls, but I'm going to tell you what, I'm trying to give you insights you don't have. Super Bowl III, everybody says fabulous. It proved the American League belonged. You know, the Jets were number one, I guarantee you. But an interesting story about that, it's a good insight into Davis. Davis always, you know, he likes to sort of, he's gone now, and I miss him, but he liked to sort of leave it hanging in the air, but to say to you, I'm connected. I know the mob. I mean, he would leave it one way or another, but he was, I guess. And he loved playing a role anyway, but he did have connections. Now it's the Friday before Super Bowl II, and he gets to Green Bay. No, that's a Friday. It's like Wednesday. He gets to Fort Lauderdale, and there's a light on. He checks in. There's a light on his hotel telephone. He picks it up, and there's a message. Mr. Davis, you don't know me, but I'm very friendly with the guy that you do know who is very connected. Well, he's talking about, I don't remember the guy's name, but the Jewish guy, the only Jewish guy in the mafia for years and years and years. And he says he would like you to address some friends of his at the Undertaker's annual convention. And it's right up the road in Miami Springs. And Al calls the guy back and says, look, tell him I'm sorry, I can't go there. I got a football game. No, I can't do it. Friday afternoon, the phone rings and it's the same guy. Mr. Davis, I'm just calling to tell you there's a limo downstairs with the motor running, waiting for you, and they're very anxious to see you. So he went and he made his speech. And the reason I know this, the only reason I know this story, because believe me, one place I would not go 3 nights before the Super Bowl was the Undertaker's ball. And because years later, the Toastmaster at a dinner on the West Coast, a guy named Newhouse, Dave Newhouse, introduced him, and Davis told that story there. So it was true. Anyway, the little sidelights to these games. By the way, about that game, Lombardi in Super Bowl II, he gets on the bus. Now, traditionally, every football team, every athletic team, when they're going to the stadium or the arena, the seat by the window in the first row belongs to the coach and whoever he wants to sit next to him to talk with. Well, Lombardi gets on and it's a guy sitting in that seat by the window. Lombardi's steaming. He walks over and he never saw the guy before in his life. He says, who are you? And the guy says, well, who are you? And Lombardi says, I happen to coach the team. He says, oh, coach, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. Can I stay on the bus? I don't have a ticket. And I thought I could crash the game if I could come in with you guys. And Lombardi looked at him. And he kind of admired the guy's spunk, because nobody did that with Lombardi. And he said, okay, sit where you are. I'll get you in through the gate, but after that, you're on your own. But that was a side of Vince you never saw. And I want to tell you another side of Vince. It's got nothing to do with the Super Bowl, but it's stuff people should know. Willie Davis, good guy, defensive end. There were 2 black guys on the Green Bay Packers at one point, Willie and Emlyn Turnell, who used to play for the Giants. And one day before practice, Willie was a rookie and second-year player. He said, I'm not going to tell him. You better tell him. I'm not going up there. So Emlyn said, I'll take care of it. Walks up. He said, Coach, Willie and I are going to miss practice tomorrow. Why, are you dying? I don't understand. That's the only excuse I will accept. No, 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 no. We got to get a haircut. You got to get a haircut, so you're going to miss my practice? Yeah, we got to go to Milwaukee to get it. You don't have to go to Milwaukee. We got a barber shop right here. He said, Coach, the guy won't cut black guys' hair. You come to my office after practice today. They get in the car, they drive to the barber shop. Coach comes in, everybody, all the psychopaths in the barber shop. Hey, Coach, are we going to win today? This weekend, what's going to happen? And he sits down and the barber says, a little light trim, Vince. He said, no, I don't want you to cut my hair at all. You see these two guys? Cut their hair. They never had to go to Milwaukee ever again for a haircut. And that's a side of Vince Lombardi that people want to know because, and I'll tell you what his genesis was. When Lombardi was coaching at West Point, he went from a freshman coach at Fordham to West Point because it seemed like everybody who coached under Red Blake at West Point, that's when Army was really good, they got head coaching jobs a year or two later. That's what he wanted. He applied to Wake Forest, which is a church school in North Carolina, and he thought he had a shot. One day, somebody on the search committee called him and said, Coach, I really liked your interview, but I don't want you to get your hopes up. The school is never going to hire a guy whose name ends in a vowel. And that kind of discrimination is the reason he was so close to Willie Davis. It's just a little sidelight for you. The next Super Bowl consequence, of course, was the Jets win. And a lot of people don't know how close the Super Bowl came to being destroyed because they had met secretly the National League and they said, we can't have this anymore. Lombardi destroyed those two teams. They're never going to win a game against us. It's the Super Bowl. And Roselle told them, it looks pretty bad. They came up with a formula which would put the best, and it was a better formula that four teams playing the best football at that time would play off to see who went to the Super Bowl. Didn't matter what your standings were. It never got used because Namath and Matt Snell and those guys and Larry Grantham, they beat the crap out of the Colts, and that changed the whole thing. Now it became a contest between leagues. Now it doesn't mean anything. In those days, that was a contest between leagues. To me, the most significant, people say that was the most significant Super Bowl because it proved the Americans could play with the Nationals, and now we had something going. The most significant one was Super Bowl IV, because the Purple People Eaters, the Minnesota Vikings, they were ferocious, defensively ferocious. And they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who lost the first Super Bowl. And I looked at the Chiefs and I went back and talked to a guy named, he was a tight end, all pro. I've just forgotten his name. You young guys can look forward to this later on, but I forgot his name. No, I didn't. Anyway, I predicted that one day, one play during this game, this guy Otis Taylor was so big and so strong, he wasn't going to run away from Ersel McBee. The 5'10" guy was supposed to guard him in a man-on-man defense. He was going to go through him. And it's one of the few times in my entire life I've been right. He took them apart. They scored a touchdown. But the point is, they had emotionally beaten the favored Vikings so badly that Page and Eller, two great linemen, Hall of Fame linemen, they were in fistfights at the end because the frustration set in. To me, that was the most important game. And like I said before, you could see those guys in their room. Now, go back to Super Bowl I for a minute. I'll tell you how relaxed it used to be and why I used to love to cover the Super Bowl. And I just waved goodbye when I knew I'm not walking so well these days, and I knew that I didn't want to get back in that crowd again. But I would have missed it earlier. The early games were the games. And there was a guy named E.J. Holland, appropriately nicknamed the Beast, middle linebacker, Kansas City, and he could play the game. Now it's 2 days before the Super Bowl. I'm eating lunch with my buddy Murphy and E.J. Holland in a coffee shop in a Long Beach, California hotel. I mean, try that today. The Gestapo would sweep in from NFL headquarters, they'd carry out and tear up your credential and throw you in the gutter. But there we are, the three of us having lunch. And I was a young guy then. I mean, now I'm 111, but then I was a young guy. I would have been 37, I think 38. And I was still a little bit naive about why these guys played. And I said to Holland, are you nervous about this game? I mean, are you, and he puts his hands out like that, palms up. He says, feel my palms. They're sweating, they're wet. And Jerk here says, is that because you're going to prove that you can play with the other league and therefore, you know, it's so much at stake? He looked at me like I was nuts. He said, it's because if we win this game, we're going to get $15,000 a man, which was tip money for these guys today. And my wife's already spent it. That's the most intelligent thing I've ever heard from a player going into the Super Bowl. I look at the Super Bowl as a smorgasbord of games. Most of them not all that good. Some games stick in my mind. The Phil Simms Super Bowl stuck in my mind. They beat Denver because I thought of my old man when I sat down to write my lead that day. My old man, former professional baseball player in the Giants chain, never made it, and never would listen to a football game. And I said to him, when I was a kid, I said to him one day, well, how come you don't listen to the football championship games? And then, he said to me, I'm talking about the colleges. He said, hey, kid, I'm a fourth grade dropout. What am I supposed to do? Root for the Yales or the Harvards or the Columbus? I don't know. The only college game I watch is Army Navy. I was in the Army. I got wounded. I root for Army. And that sort of was very interesting because it never changed until 41. I was 11 and the Chicago Bears went to Washington and they played against the Redskins. And the Bears had a quarterback named Sid Luckman out of Columbia University. And my father was very ethnically proud, but he just, football meant nothing. But I said to him, you know what? The Giants are lousy. It's in the fall, at the beginning of the year. You watch this guy at Columbia, you're going to see something. Now, when they finally got to the championship game and the Giants had gone the way of all Giant teams in those days, he said, well, what about this guy from Columbia? I said, Sid Luckman. Oh, by the way, Dad, he's Jewish. We're on the radio for that game. My father's going crazy. My father didn't know a football from an egg, but he's out there. The score was 72-0 in favor of Luckman. And I remember the great quote of all time. Wayne Milner became a scout. He was an end on that Washington football team. He became a scout for the Washington team, and I would bump into him a lot covering the Giants when I was covering the Giants. And one day I said, "Tell me about that game." He said, "There isn't much to tell." Sammy being Sammy Boer, was sitting on a stool in front of his locker, and the newspaper man went, "What happened to you guys? What happened to you guys?" And then some genius says, "Well, if Wayne Milner had caught the ball, the score was 7-0. If he had caught the pass you threw him, what would the score have been then?" And Sammy looks at me and he says, 72-7. And it was a memorable football game for me, and I was just a kid listening to it on the radio. I thought, so Simms wins, and it's a big thing in New York. It's a big thing for everybody. And Wellington, of all the owners, was a particular friend of mine. And I'm going to digress again from Super Bowls, but that's what old people do. They wander. I'm going to tell you a little bit about you need to know and you don't know about Wellington Mara. When they had those bad years, remember, like in the 70s, it was horrible. And ticket holders rented a airplane that flew over, said 7 years of lousy football or 8 years, or whatever it was, and they were burning tickets. John Mara, who now is the president of the club, was a young man, turned to his father, he said, those guys, we ought to get their names and take away their season tickets. They're not Giant fans. And Wellington looked at him and he said, they are Giant fans. That's what this is all about. If I were a Giant fan, I would have paid for the plane. That's how bad we got. They're entitled. And that was Wellington. When they played, I'll never forget, when the Giants won really tough games. I mean, they went through a stretch with so many good teams, but when they would win a tough game, Wellington would stand a little narrow place between the trainer's room and the main locker room. He wouldn't go into the locker room, wouldn't go in. When they lost, Wellington was in the locker room talking to different guys. And I asked him one day, why do you do it? He said, listen, they don't need me if they win. The glory is theirs and the celebration should be theirs. When they lose, I want them to know that I care. And that was Wellington Mara. He was a tremendous guy. And for you people in New Jersey, there almost was no second Giant stadium. There was a guy, I'll leave his name out. I don't think he's a hero of any type, who misled a lot of the stadium authority and said, if we don't put a steam shovel in the ground, we're going to lose that, whatever it's called now, that wonderful shopping center or whatever it is. And that was their property, But there was a lease, and in the lease it said the Giants had to approve any changes in that ground. So the Giants took them and sued them. It was John Mara sued them. They were mad as hell. And I called Wellington. Wellington, we were very, very close. And he wasn't talking to anybody. And he said, I'll talk to you because you'll understand the question. I shook hands on that new stadium. When did a handshake mean nothing in the state of New Jersey? I don't believe that. I wrote the column, and I think that put the last nail in the opposition's coffin. There were, so many interesting people you meet in football. What a Super Bowl game, my question, I would pose this to you. What should a Super Bowl game be? What should it be? And I will go back to the year the Titans got in the Super Bowl against the LA Rams with Kurt Warner. Now that was, you remember that Kurt Warner got off the team bus throwing passes. I mean, they threw the ball 90, 100, 200, 500,000 times a game, right? And the team was called the greatest show on turf. They ran up scores. They were never beaten. You always said they got a shot. As long as he's got the ball, he can throw it. And they had the kind of guys who can catch it. They got a shot. Well, they're ahead of the Titans, and the clock is running down, and the Titans can win the game. And it looks like there's no way the Rams are going to stop them. The clock is almost at double zeros. The ball is on the 1 yard line. They decide to throw it. They only got to get a little more than 6 feet, and it's a touchdown. So I hung up. So anyway, they call a pass play. They throw the ball. A guy named Dyson. I got to look. I made a note last night about this. The linebacker comes up. The receiver catches the ball. It seemed like this lasted, as I recall it even, seemed like this lasted an hour. They're straight up in the air. The guy's got him by the waist. The receiver falls forward. The Titans are the world champion. The receiver goes straight down or backwards. The Rams are the champion. and the linebacker won the battle, and the Rams went home. But that came down to double zeros on the clock. If the Super Bowl is half of what it's supposed to be, which it's not, that's what all Super Bowls should be. I remember the first Super Bowl, the way Lozelle, as I said before, and I were close. And I said to him, what are you going to do about television? He hadn't awarded the Super Bowl to anybody. Now, CBS had all the NFL games before the merger. NBC had the AFL games before the merger. And everybody said, well, he'll give it to CBS because they're his buddies and they've been with him all along. I said, I'm not so sure. I know Lozelle too well. I said, it was now, the game was, we didn't know who was going to be in the game, but we knew there was going to be a game. And it's now a month before the game. And I said, what are you going to do about this, Pete? What do you, I mean, I know both networks are screaming for you to get off your ass. He said, let him wait a little longer. Let him wait a little. He knew what he was going to do. What he did was he gave the game to both networks. And for CBS, he said, your cameras. And NBC had its crew and CBS had its crew. And now it's the pregame, and Frank Gifford is working for CBS, and Paul Chrisman, who was really the brains of that team that the AFL had, the play-by-play team. Paul Chrisman was much honored. He's walking out, and Gifford says, I'll walk 2 steps behind him to the side of him, because after all, he's a senior guy. And in the headphone from the control room is, hey, you asshole, get up there. He's blocking your CBS patch. That's what was at stake in this game for those 2 teams. It was amazing to me what happened. And the NFL didn't trust CBS. And I know you guys never heard this story. Lou Cusero was a fullback at Columbia. Now, fullbacks at Columbia University don't make the pros, but they're big enough to handle guys who didn't play fullback anywhere else. That NBC made Cusero the head producer because they didn't trust CBS. And just before kickoff, NFL screens doing NBC games went dark. They delayed the kickoff because of that, so they called it back. Cusero was sure, and he's looking around who to hit. He's sure that somebody from CBS has done this. A technician tripped over a cable, but we almost had a better game there than Lombardi and the Chiefs could put on the field. Better fight, certainly. It's been an interesting experience for me. I watch the NFL totally differently when I watch it now. I'll still do the Super Bowl because I can still call anybody in America and get an answer. And so that takes care of me during the week. And then after the game, I do an analysis on what I've seen on television. And now I live now in Henderson, Nevada. I've taken to watching the game in a casino, and the crowd is more interesting to me than the game that's being played. They know where they put their money. They may not know who the team is. They may not know who the quarterback, but they knew where they put their money. I never forgot this because I'm in the casino one day. Rutgers football team has lost 9 games. I think they played 10 that year. Now they're playing Syracuse. And you know how they have, if you've never been there, they have television sets all over the sports book. And people gather around to look at the game that they bet on. Well, all these people are around this one television, and they keep more and more, and they're screaming and hollering. I'm saying, geez, must be Notre Dame. I walk over, it's Rutgers and Syracuse, and the guy's yelling, come on, you Rutgersers. He didn't even know the name of his school, but they won the game, and they, on the money line, they were like 8-1. So that is another interesting side of the Super Bowl. The worst day in Super Bowl history in the town of Las Vegas, Pittsburgh and Dallas. I don't remember the year. Pittsburgh is the favorite, but it's close. I forget. I think it was like a 5-point spread, something like that. At the end of the betting cycle that week, so much money came in on the underdog that it changed the point spread. and it went to like 2 points. Well, the smart bettors bet on the favorite in the beginning of the week. They saw what was happening. They took the underdog the end of the week. They were trying to catch a middle, and they cashed both bets in that game because, yes, the favorite won, but it won by fewer points than it was supposed. But it was so many middles were caught by hustling gamblers that it was the worst day in the history of Las Vegas. A friend of mine named Vaccaro was the bookmaker at that point at downtown, one of the casinos. I think it was Minions. And the guy who owned the franchise and the hotel, he's on his boat in Lake Las Vegas. He's not going to watch the game, but he gets the score. He calls up Vaccaro and says, "How bad was it?" And Vaccaro says, "Well, you want the good news or the bad news?" He said, "Well, I want the bad news first so I can get out of the way. The bad news is we lost $180,000. And that's the house." He said, "Well, what's the good news?" "It's nothing compared to what they lost up on the strip." That's what happened here. This town stops, it's funny. It's like the NCAA tournament. Gambling people are feverish. When the NCAA, where the most money is bet in basketball, the Saturday and Sunday are the opening round, because that's where you can pick up underdogs. They haven't really established them. So a lot of money comes in. So I'm sitting, and I remember the first time I didn't go to the NCAA finals. There was a big fight in Vegas, so I stayed for that. And the first time I didn't go to the NCAA finals, I'm in the casino, and I'm in the Station Casino, and there's a section where the race people always sit because they got their own little television sets. They can put on the track they want. They make the bets. Well, there were so many basketball people here. They pushed over into the racetrack section. Now those people are having fist fights. Who's going to get a seat? I mean, it's madness. Well, these two brothers come in from Indianapolis. I don't know who they are. I remember their names. Come in from Indianapolis every year just to bet those 2 days because that's your best shot at underdogs winning. Guy says to me, "What do you know about Wyoming?" He recognized me. I said, what do you mean what I know about Wyoming? Nobody knows anything about Wyoming. No. He said, "Well, I noticed the point spread jumped. It was 15 against him, and now it's 12 against him. What does that mean?" I said, "I don't know. Go ask the Sphinx. I don't know." As the day went on, it shrunk a little more. The two brothers are getting killed. They haven't cashed a bet. Now they're pleading with me when I come back to my seat. "Please, please, tell us what you know about Wyoming." I said, "Well, the capital is Helena, and there's a lot of mountains around it, and now you're on your own." They bet Wyoming, they lost, of course. That's the story of gambling anyway. But football is, I'll tell you, I've got time. I don't know how much time you guys have. If you want to just ask me some questions about football, I'll be happy to. Oh, no, I got to tell you one last story that you never knew. Giants getting ready for the Super Bowl against Buffalo. And they don't look good. They just don't look good all week. And Parcells is really, really worried. So we get on a bus and he says to Taylor, "Hey, you sit next to me on the bus." He leans over to Taylor and he whispers in his ears, "Now listen to me. Jumbo Elliott looks like shit. And we can win this game if we can hold the ball. That's the key to winning this game. We can't give them the ball. When we get to practice, I'm going to have a scrimmage with pads," which they would never do that. "I want you to start a fight with Jumbo." Taylor looks at him and says, "Bill, say what?" "I want you to start a punch Taylor in the mouth. You understand that?" Well, you give Taylor, punch Elliott in the mouth. You give Taylor an order like that, it's like giving my first wife a valid credit card. I mean, he can't wait. They get out there, they're practicing. Bill nods. Bing! He smacks Elliott in the mouth. Elliott falls down. Elliott gets up. Elliott grabs him. They're rolling around on the ground. Belichick, who has, well, he doesn't have much humor in his life. He was a defensive coordinator. He comes running away. Bill, we got to stop this. He said, yeah, I think we should stop it. What do the guys think? Think we should stop it? But Bill, someone's going to get, well, if you want to stop it, stop it. They stopped the fight. The next day, Elliott plays, and afterwards, after they stop it, Parcells walks over to Jumbo. He says, come here. You see what happened to you today? That's going to happen to you on every play tomorrow, unless you start waking up, end the sleepwalking, and beat the crap out of that guy. Elliott was magnificent. If they could give it to an offensive lineman, they would have given it. He was magnificent, and they win the game. I think the final, you could look it up, but the final statistics in a 1 hour game, I think the Bills had it for about 12 minutes. The Giants just ran it behind Big Jumbo's big white ass. It was wonderful. All right, guys, if you got questions, I hope I'm formatting this properly for the jury here. You tell me.
Bill, you want to take the first question?
I can, yeah, okay. I was figuring out how to unmute myself. Jerry, wonderful talk. I've been noticing, there's a lot of ads about betting on sporting bets to the extent that I don't know. I like betting and having fun and stuff, but I'm thinking about all these poor people, betting, losing their ass. What do you think about the rise in popular sports betting on
It's a
TV?
good question. Let's start out by, I know most of the bookmakers, the legal ones here and the illegal ones back in New Jersey where I used to live. I don't know any bookmaker who said, listen, kid, your wife needs your milk. I'm not going to take the bet today. I mean, that's so throw that out the window. That ain't going to happen. I think it's important because it is a great source of revenue. Now, Goodell and I do not get along at all for a number of reasons. We didn't get along over Kaepernick, and I can talk about that later if you want. We don't get along over this. They try to stop New Jersey from legalizing sports betting. And he went to the Supreme Court the day the case was heard. I mean, the Supreme Court, not the New Jersey Supreme Court. He comes out and he says, I will do anything to protect the integrity of my game. And 2 weeks later, he's so anti-gambling, he gives a franchise to Las Vegas for the Raiders. Can you say hypocrite? No, make it plural, because the first two national betting things, they bet on everything. One is owned by primarily by Kraft, and one is owned primarily by Jerry Jones. But if you're a player, don't bet, So it's just so hypocritical, really. The rules are, I'll tell you, I am prejudiced about Roselle, but I'll tell you one thing about Roselle. Roselle becomes commissioner on like the 192nd ballot. He wasn't even a candidate. And now it's a few years, maybe the second year, I think, after he was, he gets a report from the FBI. Now, in those days, there was no security director to watch for this stuff in the NFL. He appointed one after this. And he finds out that Horning and Karras and a couple of other guys are betting, and that the Detroit Lions sideline looks like a lineup down at police headquarters during games. So he's got there's a guy from Kansas City who was identified by the FBI informant as Needle Nose. I never did find out who Needle Nose was. But Needle Nose bought Paul Horning a drink wasn't a casino, it was a hotel, bar. And Horning didn't know anything about who Needle Nose was, but that kind of got them thinking, what if Horning did know? And eventually Horning was placing bets on games for him and his friends. And the more it grew, the more Roselle said, I got to stop it. Now he knows he's got to stop. He knows what he's going to do. He's going to ban Karras. He's going to ban Hornick. He's going to suspend, which is a shorter bit, but he banned him, another player. And he's going to fine the Detroit Lions for their sideline. But he's got to tell Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi at that time is the most powerful guy in Super Bowl, and maybe the most powerful guy in America, the way people got behind football games. He thinks about it. He thinks about it. Then he sits down. He says, I'll do this myself. He gets on the teletype and he types a message to Vince Lombardi. I must see you tomorrow in my office. No excuses. And he signs it. And he tells me, then I went and I prayed a little bit afterwards because I didn't know what he was going to do. And I've only been the commissioner for like a year, maybe a year and a half. Phone rings. What the hell do you want? I've got practice tomorrow. I ain't coming up there and chat with you. I got to practice for a game on Sunday. And Moselle said, it's not an option, Pete, it's an order. And he hangs up Vince. He hangs him up. And as he told me, I didn't know what was going to happen that morning. I didn't take my driver to the NFL headquarters, which then was in Rockefeller Plaza. I walked down by the river and I counted the tugboats and I said, what have I done? What have I done? Lombardi comes to they were in the General Dynamics building, very small. They had a very small office then. Now the Vatican is a little smaller than the office they have. And in walks Lombardi and he says, come with me. He takes the folder with everything about Hornick on it and drops it on the desk. And he says, Vincent, you read that and you call me when you're done. Vincent only looks at the first page. He says, Pete, come here. You don't have any choice. You got no choice. They got to go. Now, where can we get a drink? And they went out and drank the rest of the afternoon. And the next thing you know, they're going to be suspended. The thing about Hornick was, Hornick writes a letter to Roselle. Roselle was a tough guy, but if you touched him right, he was a softy underneath. Hornick writes, I can't quarrel with your decision. I can only hope I can earn my way back with good behavior. Karras was another character. Now, this is a story nobody knows unless they read me, and nobody reads me anymore. So you're the winners. Karras is walking up 6th Avenue in Manhattan during a ban with a bookmaker named Tommy Marino from Detroit. And Roselle is coming down the street. And he says, Alex, how are you? How are you? Keeping your nose clean? Because I'm getting ready. You guys are going to come. And Karras says, Mr. Roselle, I have learned my lesson. I have really learned my lesson. You'll never have to worry about. By the way, I've been investing now. This is one of my financial advisors, is Mr. Marino. And that's how Pete Roselle shook hands with a bookmaker on 6th Avenue. I tell you, you couldn't make this stuff up. You couldn't if you tried. All right, I hope that answers your question. Anybody else have a question? I'm more than willing to answer it.
Mike Martin?
Yeah, hi, Jerry, thanks for the talk. I have a question, and perhaps you don't have a personal relationship with this guy. Nobody does. Belichick.
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'm sorry.
I do, and I'll tell you how it came about, but ask your question.
Yeah,
first.
the question is he, in your mind, the greatest football coach ever, or is he just he just lucked out with Brady? What's your opinion?
Okay, well, he lucked out long before Brady, trust me. Not lucked out, he proved himself. First, I'm going to tell you a story about Belichick, where our relationship started. The Giants are playing the 49ers, and they were the two best teams in football that year. And they're playing them out in San Francisco on a Monday night football game. And they were chop blockers when it was illegal. I mean, it is now, but it was extremely illegal then. Taylor gets chop blocked. He can't stand. They get him to the sidelines. Now that I wrote a book, Ken, I'm sorry to hustle, but I wrote a book called No Medals for Trying, which I loved, really. It was about 8 days in the life of the Giants. Okay, so now we're on the airplane. There are 2 lights and everything else is dark. One light is over Parcells' seat, and he just put the light on. He's just thinking, what am I going to do? He got the Eagles in a game that means life or death the following week. What am I going to do? Belichick's light is on, and on cocktail napkins, he's drawing X's and O's. And this is what we'll do if Lawrence can play. If Lawrence can't play, we got to have a spot. We'll take this guy. And all on the whole trip. The plane lands, the players and the coaches are on buses going back to Giant Stadium. The players are going to pick up their cars and go home to their families. The coaches are going to have a brief talk about what happened in the film, and then they're going to talk a little bit about the Eagles game, and then they're going to go home. I had access to all the coaches' meetings, everything. So I'm sitting in a defensive room. Now there's 3 guys on the staff then. One guy is Belichick, who is a defensive coordinator and also the coach of the defensive backfield. Another guy is Lamar Leach, who's a lineman, offensive lineman, and the third guy, defensive lineman, and the third guy is Al Groh, linebacker coach. So Belichick is playing, and me, I'm in a meeting, and I'm taping it, and Belichick is playing the block on Taylor, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. He said, those bastards, those sons of bitches, we got to do something about that. And meanwhile, Taylor's falling on his ass each time he plays it. Finally, Grohl looks up, and Lamar Leach is not doing anything. He's just chewing tobacco, and he's spitting it in a tin can. That's what's happening. Grohl says, listen, I don't care how many times you play that. He's still going to break his freaking ankle. I want to go home and see my family. Can we talk about the Eagles and I'll get out of here? Like Belichick says, all right, because Belichick, I know it because I myself am obsessive compulsive. So we're both in the same detrimental ballpark. He says, all right, they talk about the Eagles, they're leaving. Belichick's gathering his stuff up. And I said, would you mind doing me a favor? And he said, well, it depends what it is. I got work to do. I said, I got work to do too. And I don't know what the fuck you were talking about. I don't know about this, the spy and this and the stunting and you're going to do this. Would you please put it into English for me? Because I can understand English. Belichick was in heaven. Is the only person who's ever asked him these questions. He says, sit down. And he gives me a lecture on a Giant defense that I never forgot. That's the way he was. However, Belichick was always a guy who wanted to try something new. Now, when we did the book, Parcells, he loved Belichick, and it's a big but, because those guys didn't really, they admired but did not love each other. That's the best way to put it. Parcells didn't want Belichick to get too much publicity in the book because he knew I was talking to him. So now one night we're sitting alone, because I spoke to Parcells every night, well into the wee hours of the morning. Now we're sitting in his office, it's about midnight, and he said to me, look, you gotta have these X and O's guys. You need these X and O's guys during the week. The day of the game, they ain't worth shit. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'll tell you what I mean. Let's talk about Belichick. Belichick's a genius from Monday through Friday and Saturday, I guess. All right, now I'll tell you what makes my theory stand up. We're playing the Dallas Cowboys on a Sunday, and Dallas stinks. We kick off, 3 and out, we score, we kick off again. I look up, safeties are blitzing, linemen are, and I look at Belichick, I say, what the hell are you doing? If Roger Clemens could throw 9 fastballs and strike out the side, what's he going to throw? Change-ups the next inning? What are you doing? He said, well, Bill, I just want to give him a different look. And then Parcells, And he made sure I took notes on this because it was in the book. He said, Bill, you're not giving him a different look. You're showing 76,000 people up in the stand how smart you are. Look, here's my bearded lady. Here's my high wire act. Here's my dancing bears. You're not a football coach. You're a freaking carnival barker. Well, I used it in a book. Now, my relationship was good, but I didn't know how good or how bad. He got the book, of course, when it came out. Now I'm getting these phone calls. Jerry, Bill Belichick, call me. Jerry, Bill Belichick. I said, I don't need this crap. The book is over with. Why would I buy? Okay, after the third one, I call. All right, Bill, what is it you want? And he says to me, you're not going to like this. That's what I need, crap. And he said, but I'm wondering, can you get me good discounts on 50 of these books so I can give them out as Christmas presents? That was the start of our relationship. I tell you, and he's always been, when he get one year, I don't know, I guess it was in the 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there. You know, Boston press is tough. It's like, no, I don't think it's as vicious, but it's as relentless as the New York, New Jersey press with football teams. So somebody asked him a question, and another guy asked him, he says, listen, guys, I've told you this a million times. I'm not going over it. Jerry Izenberg wrote a book called No Medals for Trying. Get that book, read it. All your questions will be answered. And about 5 minutes later, the guy says, but what about, he said, I told you, buy the damn book. And it's funny, the book had been out about 4 years. His sales spiked. So I have no ill will toward Belichick about anything. Do I approve of some of the things he's done? Not necessarily. But is he the greatest coach who ever lived? I don't believe there is such a thing in any sport as the greatest anything. I think there are great guys for eras. I think Belichick has been having Brady is one thing, and recognizing Brady is also, that comes in with coaching, because, you know, his college career wasn't that distinguished. But I think Belichick learned and grew, and I think he is one of the greatest coaches we've had. I say one of. I mean, I'm of the fact I happen to know we've had some great coaches, Cowher, guys who won multiple Super Bowls. I still say if Lombardi were healthy and had been with the Packers another 5 years, nobody would have won as many Super Bowls as him. I think he was the best, but they're all. Parcells was a freaking genius. I mean, he doesn't get Taylor to knock Elliott on his ass. Maybe they don't beat Buffalo. Psychologically, that's where Parcells. I remember they're playing the Eagles in a game which they lost. It was a very critical game. It's a year before they finally went to the Super Bowl again. So I guess it's the 80, maybe it's the 85, 86 season or 86, 87, somewhere's in there. And he says to me, because, I was writing the book, so I know it was 86. He says to me, watch me with Sims this week. Because he would guide me, because what he wanted in the book, and most of the time he won because he had good ideas. He said, you watch me with Sims. I'm not going to speak to Sims this week. I said, why? He said, what's the difference? Why? He's going to wonder why all week long. And then when I want to tell him something on Friday or Saturday, it's going to sink in. The night before the game, it's Saturday night. It's a dark, windy night. I remember it so well. The flag, we're in a hotel, a resort center, and the flagpole, the rope on the flagpole with the metal on it was banging against the metal of the pole. And it was windy and it was cold, and the rooms were not that well heated. And I'm sitting with Sims on his bed, and we're talking about his life, and we're talking about Parcells. And he said, I don't know. I said, what's the matter? He said, well, now this week he's giving me the silent treatment. Well, I can't tell him. He's got to figure it. He's a big boy. He's got to figure it out for himself. He's saying, we all want to hear something. Our coaches are like our daddies. You want to hear you're doing it right. You're doing it well. But he hasn't said a damn word. I said, I promise you he's got something to say to you this morning. That's all I said. But he was a master of psychology. And he was also, but that staff, that was a tremendous staff. With all the bullshit, Belichick and he worked very well. You know, Bill was really started out as a defensive coach in the pros. And so he had his ideas and Belichick had his, and Bill would accept Belichick's, but he'd never say, "You're right, it's great." But he might say, "That's wrong, let's do something else." So many good coaches. I thought Tommy Coughlin was a good coach. Not a great coach, but that's because history judges people. You know, it's like, did you ever win the Super Bowl? You know, it reminds me of the Kentucky Derby. Guys who never won another race were long shots that won the Super Bowl when they won the Kentucky Derby. But if you don't win the Kentucky Derby, well, Nick Zito, a wonderful trainer who understands life about the way I do. One day I asked him, "Why did you become a trainer?" He said, "Well, look at me. You know, I'm too dumb to be a bartender." And that's why he became a trainer. He said, well, he really understood. And he said to me, "You know, every time I fly, the stewardess would say, 'What do you do for a living?' And I'll say, or the guy sitting next to me would say, 'What do you do for a living?' And I'll say, I train horses." "Really? Did you ever run in the Kentucky Derby?" And when I say I won it twice, the drinks are on him. So, I mean, should not be the measuring stick. How are you going to, listen, one of my favorite coaches of all time was Marv Levy. Marv Levy went to the Super Bowl 4 straight times. Nobody's ever going to do that. He lost the Super Bowl 4 straight times. But I'll tell you this, how many guys can even get there? That's a great coach. All that, you know, who's going to break their leg, who's going to get hurt, but he managed everything. Okay, another question, or is there one?
Jerry, it's now, excuse me, 11:30. You have time to stick around with us for a bit longer?
I will. If you got questions, I will.
Oh, we got questions. John Tomaszewski, you're next.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for a great talk and the memories that you've given us. What's your take on the deflated football scandal?
I think it's much ado about nothing. I'll tell you what I wrote. I'm not saying it was not impactful. I mean, I'm not saying it was not cheating in a way. But think about it. If two officials broke their legs during a game, would they then say, "Okay, we'll take a player from each team and they'll fill those 2 spots"? Why does the home team have say over how heavy or how light the footballs are? The NFL can't afford, there's never more than 16, probably 15 games. And now with the different days, maybe 13 games. They can't hire 13 or 14 guys. It's your job to go to that stadium and check the weight. That's your job. That's what we're paying you for. I mean, to me, it was something that could have been avoided without question. And I think it became too big a thing. And that might have been because of the combination of, I think the Patriots probably, and I don't think it's right, but I don't think anybody's going to hate another football team. It's crazy. Why would you waste your time on that? With all the people who are in the world in your life to hate, why would you bother with a football team or a baseball team or a basketball team? I think it was overdone because of Belichick and because not because of Kraft, although maybe he has more to answer for than Belichick, but basically because of what team did it. I hope it answers your question. We're never going to have the channel again, and they still haven't hired guys to check the balls.
Thanks.
They're not making enough money.
Ward O'Shea.
Okay, Jerry, I just want to thank you for a very, very
Before you
entertaining.
finish that, let me remind you all of one thing. Once there were giants, the golden age of heavyweight boxing, the paperback.
I got it. Jerry,
Good.
I want to thank you for your column in yesterday's Star Ledger about Sam Huff. He was a boyhood hero of mine, so very well done.
Well, he was a friend of mine, so I had to do it.
Great.
Okay, now Steve Varley.
Okay, Jerry, where do we start? Your memories of the Super Bowl are truly incredible. You know, learning things about the Keaton Gilliam battle in Super Bowl II, and Al Davis at the Undertaker's Bowl, and you know, Vince Lombardi ensuring that Willie Davis and Emlyn Tunnell could get their haircuts in Green Bay. And lastly, you know, the Taylor Elliott fight that led to the Giants win. You've truly given us a view of the Super Bowl that we could never get any other way, and we are truly indebted to you. I'm sure you'll remember from last time that we have two ways of thanking our speakers at the
I
Old
do.
Guard. And the first is with a certificate of appreciation, and I think Joel will be flashing that up on the screen. And you pointed out last time that the city of Summit has its orchid, while Madison has its rose. And our orchid
I'm
is
not going
there.
to tell you about Newark's flower.
Ah. Please understand how much we appreciate and respect you for
Thank you.
what you have done for the Old Guard. And the second way we have of thanking you is with the Old Guard salute.
Thank you, gentlemen. I will treasure the salute more than the certificate.